Victor's most ruthless move yet. Jack kidnapped to crush. Billy. The rain started just after midnight. It was the kind of rain that swallowed sound, turning the city into a gray blur of wet asphalt and flickering neon. Streetlights reflected on the pavement like broken glass. Jack Turner hated nights like this, not because he feared the dark. Jack had spent most of his life in places darker than any street corner. What he hated was the quiet, the silence that made you think, and tonight he was thinking about Billy. Billy Carter had always been trouble, even back when they were kids running through abandoned warehouses and betting pocket change on street fights. Billy had the fire, the kind that burned too hot for the world to handle. Jack had been the opposite, calm, calculated, which was probably why Billy trusted him more than anyone. Jack lit a cigarette and leaned against the railing outside the warehouse office. Inside, the machines hummed and workers shouted over the noise. The shipping business Billy had built over the past 10 years looked legitimate on the surface, but anyone who knew Billy knew better. This city ran on power, and Billy Carter had started taking too much of it. Jack checked his phone. No messages. Strange. Billy always called when something big was happening. Jack took another drag from his cigarette. Then the headlights appeared. 3 black SUVs rolled slowly into the yard. Jack frowned. Billy wasn't expecting a shipment tonight. The SUVs stopped, doors opened, men stepped out, all wearing dark suits, all moving with the same quiet precision. Jack's stomach tightened. He recognized that look. Professional, the kind of people who didn't ask questions. One of them stepped forward, tall, gray hair, cold eyes. Jack's breath caught. Victor Kane, the most powerful man in the city, and the one person Billy had been trying very hard to avoid. Victor looked around the yard calmly before his eyes settled on Jack. Then he smiled, not kindly. "Mr. Turner," Victor said, his voice smooth. "Good evening." Jack flicked the cigarette away. "What do you want?" Victor walked closer, raindrops sliding down the collar of his coat. "I'm looking for Billy." Jack shrugged. "Not here." Victor tilted his head slightly. "Yes," he said softly. "I know." The men behind him moved instantly. Jack didn't even have time to react. A fist slammed into his stomach. Another hit the side of his head. He dropped to his knees, gasping. Victor crouched down in front of him. "You see," Victor said calmly, "Billy has been making some very ambitious moves." Jack spat blood onto the pavement. "Then talk to him." Victor smiled again. "That's exactly what I intend to do." He nodded. The men grabbed Jack and dragged him toward the SUV. Jack struggled, but it was useless. Victor leaned down once more. "And you," he whispered, "are going to help me get his attention." Billy Carter slammed his fist on the table. "Say that again." Across from him, Marcus shifted nervously. "They took Jack." The room fell silent. Billy stared at him. "Who?" Marcus swallowed. "Victor." The name hung in the air like a gunshot. Billy's jaw tightened. "No," he muttered. Marcus slid a phone across the table. "They sent this." Billy picked it up. A video. Grainy. Dim lighting. Jack sat tied to a chair in what looked like an empty concrete room. Bruised, bleeding, but alive. Victor stepped into frame. Perfectly calm. "Billy," Victor said into the camera. Billy's grip tightened around the phone. "You've been very busy lately." Victor placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "I admire ambition," he continued, "but ambition without respect is dangerous." Jack glared at the camera. "Billy!" Victor punched him in the face. Billy jumped to his feet. "You son of a—" The video continued. Victor leaned closer to the camera. "You've been expanding into my territory." Billy's breathing grew heavier. "And while I appreciate your confidence," Victor said, "I believe a lesson is necessary." He stepped aside. 2 men pulled Jack upright. Jack looked directly into the camera. "Don't do it," he said hoarsely. Victor smiled. "Come see me, Billy." The screen went black. Billy stood frozen. Marcus spoke quietly. "What do we do?" Billy's eyes burned with rage. "We go get him." Victor Kane believed in strategy. Violence was easy, fear was effective, but control, that was an art. He watched Jack carefully from across the room. Jack sat tied to the chair, breathing slowly, not panicking. Victor admired that. "You're loyal," Victor said. Jack didn't respond. Victor poured himself a drink. "Billy is very lucky to have someone like you." Jack finally spoke. "You think this will scare him?" Victor chuckled. "No." He took a sip. "I think it will break him." Jack laughed weakly. "You don't know Billy." Victor leaned forward. "Oh, I know Billy very well." He placed the glass down. "And that's why this will work." Victor nodded to one of the guards. The man walked over and punched Jack again. Jack groaned but stayed conscious. Victor watched carefully. "Pain doesn't break a man," Victor said. "Loss does." Jack stared at him. Victor's eyes were cold. "And tonight," he said quietly, "Billy is going to lose something." Billy drove like a man possessed. Marcus sat beside him, gripping the dashboard. "This is a bad idea." Billy didn't slow down. "I know. Victor wants you to come." "I know." Marcus hesitated. "Then why are we going?" Billy's voice was ice. "Because Jack would do the same for me." They pulled into the abandoned industrial district on the edge of the city. Victor's message had included an address, an old shipping terminal. Billy killed the engine. Rain pounded against the windshield. Marcus looked at him. "We should bring more guys." Billy shook his head. "If Victor wanted a war, he'd start one." Marcus frowned. "Then what does he want?" Billy opened the door. "To prove a point." The warehouse doors creaked open. Inside, dim lights illuminated a massive empty space. And in the center, Jack, still tied to the chair. Billy took a step forward. "Jack!" Jack lifted his head. Relief flashed across his face. "Billy, don't!" Victor stepped out of the shadows. "Welcome." Billy stopped walking. "You've got my attention." Victor smiled. "I knew I would." Billy pointed at Jack. "Let him go." Victor shook his head. "You misunderstand the situation." Billy's fists clenched. Victor walked slowly around Jack. "You see, Billy, power is about perception." Billy glared. Victor leaned down near Jack's ear. "And right now, everyone in this city is watching." Billy froze. "What?" Victor gestured to the walls. Hidden cameras blinked red. "Live broadcast," Victor said casually. Billy's blood ran cold. "You're insane." Victor shrugged. "No, just thorough." Jack looked at Billy desperately. "Don't play his game." Victor smiled wider. "But he already is." Victor stepped closer. "You've been expanding your operations," he said. Billy stayed silent. Victor continued. "Ports, warehouses, routes." Billy's jaw tightened. Victor looked pleased. "And you did it without asking." Billy finally spoke. "I don't ask permission." Victor nodded slowly. "Yes, that's the problem." He turned toward Jack. "And this man is the reason you feel so confident." Jack glared at him. Victor addressed Billy again. "So here's the deal." Billy's stomach twisted. Victor raised one finger. "You walk away from my territory." Another finger. "You shut down half your operations." Billy's eyes burned. "And if I don't?" Victor didn't hesitate. Jack's chair suddenly dropped through a trapdoor. Billy lunged forward, but the floor slammed shut again. Victor checked his watch calmly. "There's a tank of water below," he said. Billy's heart pounded. Victor continued. "He has about 5 minutes." Billy's voice shook. "You're insane." Victor shrugged. "Your move." Billy stood frozen. Marcus whispered behind him. "He's bluffing." Victor smiled. "No." Billy's hands trembled. Jack was his brother in everything but blood. They'd survived fights, gangs, prison threats, everything. And now, Victor leaned closer. "You built your empire with him." Billy's breathing grew heavier. "Let's see if you can keep it, without him." The seconds ticked. Billy closed his eyes. Jack's voice echoed in his mind. "Don't do it." Victor watched carefully, waiting. Finally, Billy looked up. "You win." Victor's smile widened. "Smart choice." Billy's voice cracked. "I'll pull out of the ports." Victor nodded. "And the warehouses?" Billy swallowed. "Fine." Victor turned to one of his men. "Bring him up." The trapdoor opened again. Jack emerged coughing and soaked. Billy ran forward and untied him. Jack grabbed Billy's collar. "You idiot!" Billy hugged him anyway. Victor watched silently. Then he spoke. "Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure." Billy turned slowly. "This isn't over." Victor smiled faintly. "Oh, Billy." He walked toward the exit. "It absolutely is." He paused at the doorway, then added quietly, "For you." An hour later, Billy and Jack sat in the car. Neither spoke. Finally, Jack sighed. "You shouldn't have done that." Billy stared out the window. "I wasn't losing you." Jack shook his head. "You just lost half your empire." Billy's eyes hardened. "No." Jack frowned. Billy looked back toward the dark warehouse. "I lost a battle." Jack slowly realized. "You planned something." Billy smiled faintly. "Victor thinks he broke me." Jack leaned back. "And did he?" Billy started the engine. "No." The car pulled away into the rain. Billy's eyes burned with quiet determination. He just started a war. The rain didn't stop until morning. By the time the gray clouds lifted over the city skyline, the news had already spread through every alley, office, dock, and back room. Billy Carter had backed down. Victor Kane had broken him. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. Inside a quiet warehouse on the south side of the river, Billy sat at a metal table, staring at a map spread across its surface. The warehouse lights buzzed softly above him. Jack sat across the room on a crate, wrapped in a dry jacket, nursing a split lip and a bruised rib. Neither man had slept. Finally, Jack spoke. "You're really going to let him think he won?" Billy didn't look up. "Yes." Jack shook his head slowly. "You surrendered half the ports, Billy. Half." Billy placed a small red marker on the map. "That's what Victor thinks." Jack frowned. Billy leaned back in his chair. "Victor Kane doesn't just run businesses," he said calmly. "He runs perception." Jack sighed. "Yeah, I got that speech while he was punching my face." Billy smirked slightly, but perception cuts both ways. Jack watched him carefully. Billy tapped the map. "Victor thinks he scared me. He thinks kidnapping you proved he's still the most powerful man in the city." Jack crossed his arms. "And?" Billy's eyes hardened. "So now he's relaxed." Jack slowly began to understand. "Oh." Billy leaned forward. "And that's when you hit someone." Across town, Victor Kane stood in the glass office of the tallest building on the waterfront. From here, the entire harbor stretched out beneath him. Cargo ships moved slowly across the water, cranes lifting containers like giant mechanical arms. Victor liked this view. It reminded him of the truth. Everything below belonged to him, or it would. His assistant entered the office quietly. "Sir." Victor didn't turn around. "Yes?" "The reports from the docks are in." Victor nodded. "And?" "Billy Carter's crews are pulling out." Victor smiled faintly. "Of course they are." The assistant hesitated. "Some people think you went too far." Victor finally turned. His expression was calm. "Too far?" "Yes, sir. Kidnapping someone so publicly." Victor chuckled softly. "Power isn't about kindness." He walked back to his desk. "It's about reminders." The assistant nodded nervously. Victor poured himself a glass of whiskey. "Billy Carter forgot who runs this city." He took a sip. "Now he remembers." Back in the warehouse, Jack slammed his fist onto the table. "No." Billy didn't react. "I'm not sitting around while that psycho walks around thinking he owns us." Billy calmly moved another marker. "You're not." Jack glared. "Then what are we doing?" Billy slid a folder across the table. Jack opened it. Inside were photos, shipping manifests, financial records. Jack's eyebrows lifted. "Where did you get this?" Billy smiled slightly. "You weren't the only one paying attention." Jack flipped through the documents. "Victor's accounts?" Billy nodded. Jack leaned back. "Holy hell." Billy tapped the papers. "Victor controls the ports." Jack nodded. "Yeah, but he doesn't control the routes." Jack frowned. "Explain." Billy leaned forward. "Victor moves cargo through 6 major shipping lines." Jack nodded slowly. Billy pointed to 3 of them. "These 3 are legit." Then he pointed to the others. These three aren't. Jack's eyes widened. Smuggling? Billy nodded. Arms, cash, some stuff worse than that. Jack looked up. You're thinking what I think you're thinking. Billy smiled coldly. Victor embarrassed me in front of the entire city. Jack leaned forward. So, you're going to burn him. Billy's smile vanished. I'm going to erase him. 3 nights later, one of Victor's ships left the harbor. On paper, it carried construction equipment. In reality, it carried something very different. Weapons. Millions of dollars worth. Victor sat comfortably in his office as the shipment moved across the water. Everything was running perfectly. His phone buzzed. He glanced down. A message from his port manager. Shipment delayed. Minor inspection. Victor frowned slightly. That was unusual, but not alarming. He typed back. Handle it. Minutes later, another message arrived. Victor opened it. This time it was a video. Victor pressed play. The footage showed the dock, police cars, federal agents, cargo containers being opened. Victor's eyes narrowed. Inside the container, crates of weapons. A voice spoke behind the camera. Calm, confident. Billy Carter. Hey, Victor, Billy said. Victor's grip tightened on the phone. Billy continued. You taught me something the other night. Victor leaned closer to the screen. Billy smiled faintly. Perception matters. Behind him, agents hauled out more weapons. Billy's voice dropped. And right now, the entire federal government thinks these belong to you. Victor whispered slowly. Billy. Billy leaned closer to the camera. You kidnapped my best friend. Victor's eyes burned. Billy finished quietly. Now I'm taking everything you love. The video ended. Victor stood completely still. Then he smashed the phone against the wall. Glass exploded across the office. His assistant rushed in. Sir! Victor's voice was ice. Find Billy Carter. The assistant hesitated. Sir! He disappeared. Victor's eyes darkened. Then find Jack. Back in the warehouse, Jack paced the floor. This is insane. Billy leaned against a crate calmly. You saw the news? Jack rubbed his face. Yeah, I saw it. The biggest weapons bust in the city's history. Victor's name wasn't public yet, but it would be soon. Jack looked at Billy. You just started a war with the most dangerous man in the city. Billy shrugged. He started it. Jack shook his head. You don't poke a snake like Victor unless you're ready to kill it. Billy's expression hardened. I am. Jack stared at him. You've got something bigger planned? Billy smiled slightly. You know me too well. Jack sighed. What is it? Billy picked up another folder. Inside was a single photo. Jack looked down, then froze. That's... Billy nodded. Victor's private vault. Jack blinked. No way. Billy's eyes gleamed. Oh, yeah. Jack leaned back slowly. You're not just hitting his shipments. Billy shook his head. I'm taking his entire empire. Jack laughed nervously. You're crazy. Billy grinned. Maybe. Jack stared at the photo again. But if we pull this off... Billy finished the sentence quietly. Victor Kane becomes nothing. Jack exhaled slowly. Okay. Billy looked up. Jack cracked his knuckles. Let's rob the devil. Victor Kane had built his empire over 25 years. Smarter than his enemies. Ruthless when necessary. Untouchable. But now, he stood in his office watching the news on the television. Reporters talked about the weapons seizure, federal investigations, illegal shipments. Victor turned off the screen. Someone had betrayed him. The door opened. One of his top lieutenants stepped inside. Sir. Victor didn't turn. Tell me. We found something. Victor looked over his shoulder. Billy Carter? The man shook his head. No. Victor's eyes narrowed. What then? The lieutenant hesitated. Your vault security system logged an access attempt. Victor froze. When? 2 hours ago. Victor's voice dropped dangerously low. Impossible. No one knows the access code except... Victor finished the sentence quietly. Except me. The lieutenant nodded. Victor walked slowly toward the window. The harbor lights flickered in the distance. Somewhere out there, Billy Carter was moving. Victor's lips curled slightly. So? His voice was almost amused. You want to play games? Victor turned. His eyes were cold again. Prepare the men. The lieutenant nodded. For what? Victor smiled. For war. Back in the shadows of the city, Billy and Jack stood outside an enormous steel building, Victor's private vault. Jack whistled softly. Man, he's paranoid. Billy studied the entrance. Not paranoid enough. Jack glanced around nervously. Victor's going to figure this out. Billy nodded. Probably already has. Jack stared at him. Then why are we still here? Billy smiled. Because this isn't the real plan. Jack blinked. What? Billy tossed him a small device. Jack caught it. A detonator? Billy grinned. Jack's eyes widened. You're blowing up the vault? Billy shook his head. No. He pointed to the skyscraper across the harbor, Victor's headquarters. Jack slowly began to smile. Oh. Billy looked toward the glowing tower. Victor thinks we're coming for his money. Jack chuckled. But we're coming for him. Billy pressed the timer on the device. 10 minutes. Jack cracked his neck. This is going to be fun. Across the water, Victor Kane stood in his office, completely unaware that the real attack was about to begin. And this time, Billy Carter wasn't backing down. The harbor wind was cold that night. Billy Carter stood on the rooftop of a parking structure across from Victor Kane's skyscraper, staring at the tower of glass and steel rising into the clouds. It looked untouchable. That was exactly how Victor wanted it. Jack adjusted the strap on the duffel bag slung over his shoulder and stepped beside him. Still think this is a good idea? Billy didn't look away from the building. No. Jack smirked. Good. Just making sure we're both equally insane. Across the water, Victor's headquarters glowed like a beacon in the dark. Dozens of floors, hundreds of employees, security systems that cost more than most houses, and somewhere inside, Victor Kane. Billy checked his watch. 3 minutes. Jack leaned against the concrete wall. You know, he said, most people would have just skipped town after what Victor did. Billy's jaw tightened. He kidnapped you. Jack shrugged. Yeah, but technically I'm fine. Billy looked at him. You were drowning. Jack paused. Okay, yeah, that part sucked. Billy turned back toward the skyscraper. Jack followed his gaze. You really think he's still in there? Billy nodded slowly. Victor's ego wouldn't let him leave. Jack laughed softly. Good. Billy raised the detonator. Because in 2 minutes, Jack finished the sentence. His entire world explodes. Inside the penthouse office, Victor Kane stood in silence. The city lights stretched for miles beyond the glass walls. But Victor wasn't looking at the skyline. He was watching the security monitors. Every floor of the building, every hallway, every entrance. Behind him, 4 heavily armed men waited, Victor's most trusted enforcers. One of them stepped forward. Sir. Victor didn't turn. Yes? Security at the vault reported another access attempt. Victor's eyes flicked to a monitor. A camera showed the vault building across the harbor, 2 shadowy figures near the entrance. Victor smiled slightly. Billy Carter. The guard nodded. What do you want us to do? Victor calmly picked up his whiskey glass. Nothing. The men exchanged confused looks. Sir? Victor sipped the drink. If Billy wants the vault... He set the glass down. Let him have it. Back across the harbor, Jack stared at the timer. 10 seconds. You sure this won't level the entire block? Jack asked. Billy shrugged. Probably. Jack sighed. Great. 5 seconds. The wind whipped across the rooftop. Boom. The explosion tore through the night. Flames erupted from Victor's private vault building. Glass shattered. A fireball rolled into the sky like a thunderstorm. Sirens began screaming almost instantly. Jack blinked. Okay, that was bigger than I expected. Billy lowered the detonator. Across the harbor, lights inside Victor's skyscraper flickered. Security alarms began flashing. Jack grinned. And there it is. Billy grabbed the duffel bag. Let's go. The lobby of Victor Kane's headquarters was chaos. Security guards rushed back and forth. Phones rang nonstop. Everyone was focused on the explosion across the harbor. which was exactly what Billy wanted. Jack and Billy walked calmly through the revolving door. Jack adjusted his baseball cap lower over his face. Man, he whispered, I can't believe this is working. Billy kept walking. Confidence is everything. They moved past the reception desk without anyone stopping them. Jack leaned close. You realize if this goes wrong, we die. Billy pressed the elevator button. Relax. Jack stared at him. That's your advice? The elevator doors opened. Billy stepped inside. Pretty much. Jack sighed and followed. The doors closed. Jack glanced at the control panel. Top floor? Billy nodded. Jack pressed the button. The elevator began rising. Floor 10, floor 15, floor 22. Jack shifted nervously. You ever get the feeling something's not right? Billy didn't answer. Floor 30, floor 31, floor 32. The elevator slowed. Jack frowned. That's weird. Billy looked up. Why? Jack pointed. We didn't press this floor. The elevator stopped, the doors slid open, and 12 armed men stood waiting. Jack whispered, Well, Billy exhaled slowly. I guess Victor figured it out. The guards aimed their weapons. Hands up. Jack slowly raised his hands. Okay. No need to get dramatic. Billy remained calm. One of the guards stepped forward. Victor Kane wants to see you. Jack looked at Billy. Well, that saves us the trip. The guards escorted them down a long hallway. Jack leaned toward Billy. This was a trap. Billy nodded. Yeah. Jack frowned. You knew? Billy shrugged. Victor's smart. They reached the penthouse doors. The guards pushed them inside. Victor Kane stood near the window. He turned slowly as they entered. Billy Carter. Jack muttered under his breath. Oh boy. Victor walked toward them calmly. I must say, he glanced at the burning building visible across the harbor. That was impressive. Billy smirked. Thought you'd like it. Victor studied him. You destroyed my vault. Billy shrugged. Insurance payout? Victor chuckled. You walked into my building. Billy nodded. Yep. Victor's smile faded slightly. You killed my shipments. Billy tilted his head. Oops. Victor stepped closer. And you think this ends well for you? Billy leaned forward slightly. No. Victor raised an eyebrow. No? Billy smiled. This ends badly for you. Victor sighed. You're brave. Billy shook his head. No. Victor looked curious. Then what are you? Billy's smile widened. Prepared. Victor's eyes narrowed. Explain. Billy nodded toward Jack. Jack suddenly dropped to one knee and unzipped the duffel bag. Victor's guards immediately raised their guns. Don't move! Jack slowly lifted something from the bag, a small black device. Victor frowned. What is that? Jack grinned. Plan B. Victor's eyes flicked to Billy. Another bomb? Billy shook his head. No. Jack pressed a button. Suddenly, every screen in the penthouse turned on. Security monitors, televisions, computers, all displaying the same thing. Victor's financial records, illegal transactions, offshore accounts, bribes, money laundering. Jack whistled. Man, you've been busy. Victor's expression darkened. Billy spoke calmly. We hacked your servers. Victor laughed coldly. That's meaningless. Billy nodded toward the television. A live broadcast appeared. News reporters, breaking headlines. Victor Kane's entire criminal empire displayed on screen. Victor's face finally hardened. You... Billy nodded. Yeah. Victor's voice dropped to a whisper. You just signed your death warrant. Billy shrugged. Maybe. Sirens suddenly echoed outside. Police. Dozens of them. Victor slowly turned toward the window. Blue and red lights filled the streets below. Jack smiled. Looks like you're having company. Victor stood very still. Then he started laughing. Billy frowned. That's not the reaction I expected. Victor turned around.